Welcome back to DAGryffyn Hobby. My name's Dave. Got another layout expansion update for you, this time on the lift bridge. I am doing my best not to rush myself on this project. The lift bridge is something that needs to work and needs to work well. Otherwise, it's going to interfere with my carefree running that I've enjoyed so far on this layout. I've gotten to a point that I think will do the job. It's taken a lot of trial and error, a lot of mocking up, a lot of building and rebuilding, but that's what I really enjoy. So I wish I could tell you I was further along on the layout, but just the fact that the bridge is more or less complete makes me really happy. And there are certain sections of the layout that really should move a lot faster once the bridge is taken care of. The table's all built to continue the loop all the way around, so from here on out, I hope, progress will be swift. One of the things that's slowing me down at the moment on the layout expansion is that I have two spots where I need a lift bridge or a pivoting bridge or swinging bridge, something that will allow me to get the track out of the way so I don't have to duck under it. Because I just refuse to set any part of the layout as something I have to duck under. Because I know I'll either hurt my back, stand up and smash my head into it. So there's no duck unders for me. I need something that I can lift up and get out of the way. Something I've seen quite frequently and that works quite well is raising the hinges for your lift section above the track level so that when it pivots up, it clears the track. That works fantastically. I just don't feel like doing that. I'm trying to come up with something that will hopefully, at least in one spot, be completely hidden. I've been watching a good number of videos on different styles of lift bridges, and some videos I've learned a lot from, and there are some really good options. One particular video had this fantastic metal substructure that the bridge bolted to, and it looked amazing, and that it would probably last forever. Now, I'm trying to do something as simple as possible. I want this, hopefully, to not only look great, but also be something that most people would be able to reproduce without any special tools or special knowledge. So I'm not going to be welding anything. I'm not going to be using any high-tech engineering. I want this to be as basic as possible. What you're looking at now is my first mock-up of the type of bridge I want to do. This is not where a bridge is going. Both my bridges, unfortunately, will be angled from the table, which will complicate the setup of both bridges, which is a little annoying, but that's just the way it goes. I figured I'd start somewhere with a flat edge to work on the concept. And that's what I've done here. It's just a piece of foam with a bar going through it, through some wood brackets. And it doesn't pivot at the edge of the platform. It pivots a few inches in. And that enables the end to drop down and swing out of the way. I wanted something where the track could overlay the edge of the bridge on both sides. On this side, the track from the table overlays the edge of the bridge. So why move the pivot point all the way out here? The track can be very close together. I might have to angle the cut a little bit, but the top of the rails I want to be almost touching. I really don't want any excessive gap. And that's what this bridge style lets you do. It drops the track down below. You don't have to have a large clearance here. If I hold this up where it should be, the track does hit, but not really until it gets to the bottom. So if I cut that at an angle, I should, in theory, be able to get these two tracks really close together. And when this pivots, it will just drop underneath it. I want the seam between the table and the bridge to be as tight as possible. I don't want hinges above the surface. I want to have it operate as smooth as possible. So that means as small of a gap as possible between these two sets of tracks. So that's the idea. the pivot point of the bridge is moved out so that the edge of the bridge drops without hitting the track that's there. What we have here is a slightly better mock-up and a little bit closer to what it is I'm actually going to be doing. I've been trying to figure out exactly where the track is going to go without tearing up my current layout, but as you can see, I've started pulling that track up anyway. I can pull out the straight piece and put the loop back in place if I think it's going to be a long time before I can actually get this bridge working. But for the time being, I'm trying to really line things up and figure out exactly what kind of shape I need for this bridge so that I can get working on it, because I'll probably end up building 2 or 3 or more versions of it until I get it to work the way I want it to. The pivot point is further out from the edge of the bridge, so that way when it lifts up, that edge drops down and out of the way. Depending where the pivot point is and how it's constructed, the bridge might come too far back. So I will have to figure out something on the final design to keep the bridge from going too far. I don't think that'll be a problem. I think the bigger problem is figuring out exactly what type of hinge to use and where to support it. Right now I've got these big pieces of wood on the outside of the table, and that I don't want. I don't want those there. So what I might be trying next, taking the foam off of the extension and trying to mount these brackets further in on the table itself so that there's nothing on the bridge side of the layout to indicate that there's a bridge there. And this one, I'm thinking of trying to make it look like it's not a bridge, that it's just part of the layout. And hopefully, when done, you won't be able to tell that it lifts up, but then you would just reach under it and the whole thing would pivot. That's where I'm paused at the moment, trying to figure out exactly how to make it work. Now, initially, on both of these, I have a bar that goes through the foam and the wood to act as a pivot point. I've just ordered some hinges that I believe you'd use for a door with hidden hinges. So I should be able to mount them to the inside of the wood and then the inside of the foam or whatever I'm using for the bridge, and you won't see it. That way, then I'll have a hinge on each side, and I don't have to worry about a bar going through the whole piece. It's good for mock-up, but it's really not working well enough to be in the final design. Something else I've picked up after watching some videos are these dowel pins. You have a male and a female end, and you would mount these. Well, let's go over here and take a look. The male end I would mount on this side wherever the bridge comes down and rests, and obviously it would be flush. And then when you lower the bridge, this piece comes down and sits over it. I'll probably use a few of these just to make sure that everything lines up as smooth as possible. This should be the final version of this lift bridge, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. It is not the prettiest construction, at least from the angle that I'm looking at it right now, but it's working pretty well, and I'm really happy with the minimal gap in the track where the lift bridge moves. This version of the bridge is made out of a 3/4 thick piece of plywood with 1x4 on the sides to add some strength and rigidity to it. It has the hidden hinges that work really well, much better than a pole taped to the bottom of it. It will be interesting to see how well it holds up over time, but at the moment it's looking pretty good, and I think it really checks all the boxes of the things I wanted it to accomplish. Being that it's made out of wood, it's a little heavier than I had intended, but it's also a lot sturdier than it would be if I made it out of foam. The bridge will stay up. I had to try a bunch of different configurations. This board here has been placed at numerous different angles and distances to get the pitch right so that the bridge would go back a little bit up top and sit. But there is also a magnet behind here, and it does help keep it up. It seems pretty good. I mean, I really wouldn't trust it long term to sit up like that, but if I'm raising it to walk past and I'm going to grab something and go back, it's good to sit like that. I would be afraid if I bumped into the table that it might come down. Maybe at some point I can put a piston under there so that it closes softly, but that's not necessary at the moment to make progress here. I initially had foam go up to the edge of the table. I found that the foam wasn't quite sturdy enough to keep the track exactly where I needed it. I replaced it in this section with 1x4, and that will keep the track a lot more secure and located exactly where it needs to be. This surface here is the edge of the layout where I've had the 1-inch foam, and I've sculpted it to look a little bit more like scenery. So all this here will be covered with foam, just like the rest of the layout. So I'm really hoping that it really hides the fact that this is a bridge. Everything I've done on this bridge, I've done and redone probably 10 times at this point, which explains all these other holes here in this piece of wood. I should probably replace this piece, but at this point, the dowel pins are lined up. I'm going to hope this just holds up. It's not pretty, but then again, you're not going to see it. I did try to run electricity through these dowel pins, and while they do conduct electricity and in theory work, they have to really be positioned perfectly in order to have good conductivity. So I had run wires up through the piece of wood to each one for the center rail, one for the common, and it worked, but not well enough that I felt like that was the way to go. You can see the wood that supports the hinge and the bridge is recessed into the table and flush with the edge. That way it doesn't come out into the aisle, doesn't take up space, and I can build the scenery right up to the edge of the bridge. And again, this all will be covered with a sheet of foam, and it will be contoured along with the rest of this side of the layout. So it should look pretty seamless when I get there. I've tried some interesting wiring to make the bridge work, and all the things I was trying, while in theory would be fine, I felt like there was too much room for error. I feel like things wouldn't be as reliable as I would want them to be. These wires just run up to the track on the bridge, and I'll connect that to the same power that the rest of the layout is connected to. There's no reason to kill the power on the bridge, but I wouldn't mind killing the power to the other side of the bridge when it's up, so that a train doesn't run right off the edge if the bridge is up. So that I might still play with, but for the time being, I'm just going with easy, basic, and reliable. You can see a little more evidence here of all the times I've taken this apart and put it back together, trying to adjust things to work the way I wanted them to. I really do work better just with trial and error as opposed to planning and trying to design something. I mean, I love coming up with an idea, but then really to make it work, I have to just keep trying it. You may notice the wood doesn't touch here, but that's okay because again, the foam will come up the side of the layout to this point and that seam will be hidden. It's a little hard to show you the hinges because they're sandwiched between the upright and the bridge surface. That's the pivot point right there, and then each side of the hinge is screwed to either the bridge or the support. It's very basic, and I have found these to work really well. They're just a hidden door hinge off of Amazon. So the train room is a bit of a disaster right now because I've been working and moving things around so much, and I can't even run trains at the moment. The outer loop is connected to this part that goes over the bridge, and I could probably run as far as that gap over there, but then that would be the end of the line. So I'm going to continue working on this outer loop. Now that the bridge is pretty much set, I'll go towards the back there and work on getting the suspension bridge set up, and then back around the side to the Menards bridge, and then back along the wall and connect it back to the layout. I've pulled everything from this corner out so that I could get to this space. And I believe I'm going to use a combination of the 94 or 96, whichever it is, and the 54, just to get a bit of a wider turn without actually using all the larger radius. And then that's going to come back to the main loop right there. So that will give me a straight run across the back of the layout that's about 20 feet long. The outer loop here will probably just be removed. That's going to affect the way that I can rebuild up this whole corner. So it will be interesting to see where that goes. This track on the bridge I laid out a couple of times. This is the second set of curved pieces I've cut to fit the bridge. I wasn't happy with the way that the cut was made the first time. It was a little too wide and a little too rough. I had used a die grinder with a cutoff wheel and it just kind of made a mess. This cut was made with a hacksaw and with the track in position. So I lined everything up the way I wanted it and then made this cut with a hacksaw, and I think it did a pretty good job. It would have done a better job if the blade wasn't old and dull and rusty. Considering the condition of the blade, I think it did a pretty good job. Same on this other side. I had the track laid. I decided where I wanted the cut, and I cut it in place with the hacksaw. The track is nice and close, and it just drops down without touching. And the gap between the bridge and the layout is really minimal. I mean, that gap can be hidden very easily with scenery. I swear that gap looks a lot bigger on video than it does in real life, but on this side, the track from the bridge overhangs the layout. And that comes down nice and close. And I've got this extra tie here that straddles the seam and helps keep the track aligned. I also added in a couple extra ties on each of the turns so that I would have a little more stability with the track, because the Menards track does not have a lot of ties. So I took some older pieces of track that I had cut for different spots, and I removed the ties and put them on these pieces. It's been a lot of trial and error, and I've built and rebuilt, dismantled and remantled a couple of times, but I'm pretty happy with the way this is turning out. I have not run a train over this yet, but I have rolled my test car over it a bunch of times. The outer loop track is more or less secured to the bridge. I laid out the roadbed for the inner loop. Hopefully that is exactly where it needs to be, because I am really nowhere near ready to get the inner loop going. I'm really not sure why I actually secured that down, other than I was getting ahead of myself, because it might not be in the exactly right place. So time will tell. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on DAGryffyn Hobby.